Likkutei Torah, Drushim for Sukkot, page Pei, Beis, first column. Okay, the Rabbi was explaining that the wine libation is a level of Bina, and the Nitzach HaMayim, pouring water on the Mizbeach, is Chochma, and Chochma is higher than Bina, and therefore Nitzach HaMayim is a greater Simcha than the pouring of the wine. So he says, it's known in Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. We have Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. HaTorah Shebiksav is Rak B'chinas Eisis V'tzirufim. Torah Shebiksav, written Torah, primarily is letters, combinations of letters. K'may Merazal, like Chazal tell us, the whole Torah is the names of Hashem. L'chein kol Eisis Menuyas. Therefore, in Torah Shebiksav, one letter is missing, the whole Torah is not kosher, or Tanakh, whatever. Every letter is counted for. Leval Yadif Yachser, can be any added letters, any deducted letters. V'chol eis tzarchiyas b'dmusi v'tavnisi, every letter has to be formed, shaped properly. V'anegi, if two letters touch, it's not kosher. Why? Because Torah Shebiksav, the primary thing is the letters. Every letter counts. In the oral Torah, you can explain something in a million different ways. In the eis, you say b'chinas bina, letters are the level of bina. Why? Commission calls it b'makor achan pasuk. Pitachta olav pituchi chaisam. And the pasuk that you should, and the tzitz, you should engrave and the letter and the tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wore, Kodesh Hashem. You can hear the b'chush when we see clearly, when seichel comes into understanding, so then when you start understanding something, it's always in letters. How do you understand something? You're forming letters in your brain to understand it. Otherwise, but the level of chokhmah, the malmi seichel musik, ein be'eis yisadayin, there's no letters in it. The Rebbe at the beginning of the Maamar asked, why isn't Simchas Beis HaSheva Nitzach HaMayim mentioned clearly in Chumash? So the Rebbe is getting to now, because Torah Shebiksav is Bina, letters. Nitzach HaMayim is Chokhmah. It's not letter. It's not Torah Shebiksav. If it's higher than Torah Shebiksav, then it can't be mentioned in Torah Shebiksav. Torah Shebiksav is a level of Bina, and Bina is called a Sefer Torah, like it says in the Zayat. Hainu b'chinas eis is a machshava, the letters of thought. So the Rebbe said, but we know at Eis mi chokhmah nafkis. The Zayat says Torah comes from chokhmah. Here we're saying Torah is Bina. Torah Shebiksav is Bina. The Zayat says, so he says the Gabi Amatzel b'chinas chokhmah. Compared to Hashem, it's coming down to the level of chokhmah. But by the people, it's the level of Bina. And therefore he says, in the parentheses, the Alter Rebbe says, that's why, in order to get Torah Shebiksav, Chumash, and Har Sinai, they have to have 50 days, because there's 50 levels of Bina. So he says, Torah Shebiksav is a level of Bina. But Torah Shebal Peh is a level of Chokhmah. Sham ein ois yis'ikar kol kach. In Torah Shebal Peh, the words are not that important. An extra letter, not an extra letter, it's not that important. Therefore, a medak can base yis'er kol kach. Therefore, you don't have to be so particular in the letters. Ki b'Torah Shebal Peh is the ikar chokhmah v'askola. Okay? Over there, the primary thing in Torah Shebal Peh is understanding. That's where you find another interesting halacha. If you read Torah Shebiksav, even though you don't know what it's talking about, you get a mitzvah of, like Tillim. You read Tillim, you know what it's talking about. But you get a mitzvah of learning Torah. Why? Because Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, is not so relevant understanding. Because of the level of Chokhmah. I mean, it's a level of Bina. But he's saying Torah Shebiksav, he says, my time in the Rabbi. Okay? So he says, Because Torah Shebiksav, the primary thing is not the understanding of it. The primary thing is the letters. You're saying the letters properly in Tillim, so that's what it is. Torah Shebal Peh is already understanding. If you read Torah Shebal Peh, somebody takes a Gemara, okay, with vowels, and they read it, and they don't know what they're talking about, they don't get a mitzvah of learning Torah. In Torah Shebiksav, if you read it even though you don't know what you're talking about, you get a mitzvah of learning Torah. Why? Because Torah Shebiksav is not so much relevant to the understanding of it.
So why is it Bina?
1 second, he's going to explain. Like the Gemara says, my time is the Rabbi. The Gemara wants to know the reason, which is time and which is a level of Chochmah, Kanaida. Okay, skip 4 lines. Now we can understand the Shanis Chayayin Ksiv B'Torah. Now, the Alter Rebbe at the beginning of the Maamar, like we said, asked the question, why is Nisach HaYayin in Chumash, clearly, and Nisach HaMayim is not mentioned in Chumash? So he says, very simple. Nisach HaMayim is Bina, Nisach HaYayin is Bina, and that's the level of Torah Shebiksav. Nisach HaMayim is the level of Chochmah. It doesn't happen in Torah Shebiksav. It's only halacha Meshim Sinai. V'hainu ki yayin b'chinas bina Torah Shebiksav. V'zeh pirish yeina shel Torah. Uk'elakami, though this is going to explain later. L'chein yecholim likosif b'Torah Shebiksav. Therefore, because it's the same level as Torah Shebiksav, bina, Nisach HaYayin could be written in Chumash. Masha'enki Nisach HaMayim, which is the level of Chochmah, Eini Yecholi is Kosev B'Torah Shebiksav. Shetis Pashet B'chinas Ksav. Eisis, which is the Meichen Da'aba, Meichen Da'ema. Okay, go down like 15 lines.
So you're saying the reason it's so high because it cannot be written. Because it's a high level.
No, because it's so high, it can't be written.
It could be.
It cannot be.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with him. But he said it the opposite way. Because it's so high, it can't be written.
That's why it's not written in Torah.
Correct, clearly. But Nisach HaYayin is a lower level. It's Bina, that could be written Torah Shebiksav.
I still don't understand why is Torah Shebiksav Bina.
If it's not understood. If you don't have to understand it. I don't know. We'll see later. I think he explains it. We'll see. No, try to figure it out. What?
Hashem's perspective.
No, he said even though it's from Chochmah Nafkes, that's from Hashem's perspective.
Right.
But from our perspective, Torah Shebiksav is a level of Bina. Nobody's asking a very good question, but for Torah Shebiksav you don't have to understand. And Torah Shebal Pal you do have to understand. Chochmah you don't understand. So it should be reverse. Now we can understand what the Gemara says in the pasuk Ktevim Deidach Miyayin. The Gemara says, "Arevim alai divrei seifrim." The words of the Chachamim are sweeter to me. Hashem says more than Yeinu Shel Torah, even more than the secrets of Torah. But Tzarich Lahavim, we need to understand what does it mean divrei seifrim. Why is divrei seifrim always refers to the Chachamim? Mitzvah divrei seifrim, all the expressions mean the Chachamim. So he's asking why the Chachamim called divrei seifrim, and also what does it mean Yeina Shel Torah? Okay, so he says like this.
Because they count.
Yeah, I'm saying, but conceptually, Torah Shebal Peh is not written in a sefer.
Yaino meaning yain.
Yain, the wine of Torah, the secrets of Torah. Inyan. In a mavor b'sefer Yetzirah. It says this in Sefer Yetzirah. This is the thing the kids quote in the Bar Mitzvah Maamar. B'shleish dvarim bara Kodesh Baruch Hu Seilamei. With 3 things Hashem created the world: Sefer, the Sipur. Describe the book and the story. Sefer is the level of Chochmah, Mashpil, the Sefer, which is Bina, which is the level of Machshava. And Sipur means telling. But there's a level of Dibur, Mekabel, Misefer, Shubina, Shari, Bilti, Machshavi, Yevshel, Adaber. Okay? So he says like this: Sefer It says Hashem created the world with three things. Sefer is the level of Chachma, Sefer is the level of Bina, and Sipur is the level of Machshava. I'm sorry, Dibur. Yeah, I just read it wrong. Sefer is the level of Chachma, Sefer is the level of Bina, and Sipur is the level of Dibur. Okay, skip the parentheses. Huh?
Sipur is Bubba Meiser.
Baba Meiser.
Sipur borders on Bubba Meiser. It's like you
Only if you're a Baba telling a story, then it becomes a Baba Meiser. You know, especially in Hasidic philosophy, the stories that the Babas tell are the Rebbe Rashab, no, the Friedrich Rebbe, I'm saying, used to go to his Baba Rivka, who was the wife of the Rebbe Marash, his grandmother, to hear a lot of stories. The Rebbe Rashab used to go to his mother to listen to stories. So it's by Chassidim, there's a mimer, there's a story, and there's a nigun. These are three unique levels. Nigun is the highest, and a story than a mimer.
Maimar is the lower?
Maya is high, no?
Lower than a story? No.
That's why they said Torah Tinecha. Is that why they said Torah Tinecha?
Rabbi Hillel Paritcher, when he went out to, as the Mittel Rebbe told me, you should plant Ruchnias and harvest Gashmias. He used to go around collecting money. So Rabbi Hillel Paritcher was told by Mittel Rebbe that you should plant Ruchnias and Akerim, you should harvest money. And then he told him, when you start with Jungalai teaching him about Chassidus, you should start with stories. Before you learn Maimorim, you should start with stories. So I think he asked the Mittel Rebbe why. So the Mittel Rebbe said to him, because look in Chumash. The first book and a half of Chumash, there's no mitzvahs. There's one mitzvah of Milah, which anyway is mentioned later. The mitzvah of the hind, the Gid Anasha. But otherwise, out of the 5 books, 1.5 books start off with stories, and then you can go into halacha. In other words, first you have to implant emunah. Emunah comes from stories. The Rebbe was fighting this aspect. There were many teachers years ago. They would say, why teach kids miracle stories? They don't make sense. Kriyas Yamsu, all these, yeah, the kids are not going to digest. So they said, you don't teach kids miracles and story because they're not going to believe it. And the Rebbe was screaming many Misi, especially in the earlier years. And the Rebbe was saying, on the contrary, kids believe the story. That's the implanting of Emunah. Emunah is like in the 13 animaments that we don't say, but we believe in, more than the people that say them. That animamin is that there's tzaddikim, and there's miracles, and there's prophecy, and that's the foundation of Emunah. Is telling children stories. That's why it's so important. Bedtime story. I'm talking not Mother Goose with the Little Red Riding Hood, the face, whatever. We're not talking about, MacDonald had a farm. We're talking about Yiddish, Chassidish stories. That this implants very strongly emunah in the child. That then when they grow up, they have the foundation of emunah. Then you can start teaching them halacha, halfway through Shmais and Mishpat, Yisrei, Mishpatim, but the whole first book and Shmais Va'era Bei B'Shalach and half of Yisrei. Okay, so it's like half the book is mamish stories.
Only a Rebbe can say a mimer though, so you would think that that's the highest.
But it's not. Story and enigma is higher.
Story what?
Story and enigma is higher. The Rabbi brings it down somewhere in Ayim, that expression, whatever.
How is the niggun highest?
A nigun
Because
is,
there is no words in it?
nigun is the pen of the soul.
Touches the soul.
Nigun is the pen of the soul. Alter Rebbe said, just like the mouth is the pen of the mind, The Alter Rebbe's vart that everybody now uses, even in the secular world. The Alter Rebbe said, just like the mouth is the pen of the mind, Negina is the pen of the soul. That's why it's so important what Nugunim you sing, not to sing Koisha, Treif, and Nugunim, because it's the level of the soul. The Rebbe brings down a Yem Yen, Tzemach Tzedek, in the middle of learning, would stop and sing a nigun. And his children, from the nigun he was singing, they were able to know what he was learning. They were in another room, they heard him singing. They were able to know what he was learning. No, not in the shower. You can't sing Nigunim in the shower, no.
Now it makes sense. Now I understand why Kohen Gadol, I used to make fun of this statement that after 80 years he went, because they say listen to the Goyish music.
No, that's not him. That was Acher. Also similar, Reb Meir's Rabbi, because he used to listen to Greek music.
The music has this profound effect.
Music has, listen, how many people are committing suicide because of the music they hear, or they're doing wild things because of the music they hear? Music has the strongest impact. The strongest impact. The Rebbe spoke once about putting a kid to sleep with Yiddish music. Was I married? No, I was a bacher still. The Rebbe spoke about, there's a nigun, an old Yiddish lullaby that mothers would put their kids to sleep. It was called Roshin Kiss and Mandlach, raisins and almonds. And it's a whole thing, a song in Yiddish. Teira is the best eschera, Teira is the best goods. And this is the way, the Rebbe spoke about it, that was the way Yiddish kids were raised, that they went to sleep at night listening to Yiddish, it wasn't Chassidish music, it was Yiddish music about holiness and Kedusha of Teira. And the Rebbe is speaking about the impact. Music has even any therapist will tell you, music has a tremendous impact on the person. You can tell what mood the person is in by what they're singing or what they're into. And that's why, as we mentioned, when you have certain songs that were written by Goyim, or certain songs which were written by Apikursim, and you make that the national anthem of a holy land, it doesn't work. Because the person puts himself into the music. Just like an artist puts himself into the art, a musician, a singer puts himself into the music. So it's very important who is singing the music. There are a few tzaddikim, the Rabbi did it with Odessa, Muna, Napoleon, I mean, there are different songs. But only tzaddikim could take Goyish music and make it into Kedusha. Just a singer today takes a Goyish song and puts Hebrew words to it, doesn't make it holy. Can't transform it to Kedusha.
So 30 years ago they did a study on animals. Certain music caused them to have aberrant sexual behavior. And even on plants, they saw some reaction in the plant.
Okay, by people for sure. It's like, okay, let's go back to it. Okay, all the way down. Now, even though Chachma is higher than Bina, Afal became Chachma and Bina. And the name is Pasha. They're two inseparable friends. If Chachma and Bina, Tersha B'Ksavim, Tersha B'Alpeh, one is Chachma, one is Bina, and they're inseparable friends, so our avodah is to combine them, to make them inseparable. We can separate the two. A person, God forbid, only believes in Tersha B'Ksav and not in the oral Torah. That's the Korates, all the Sedukim, the Baitusim, the Apikursim. They don't believe in the oral Torah. So it says our avodah is to bind them together. And therefore, and through us doing it, so Lamaila becomes like that. Therefore, you draw water by Simcha's Beis HaSheva with Simcha, with Sasing, that's you. You should become a water drawer. Water you draw with Sasing, which is the level of Bina. And then you come Yechachmo Bina Li'Yisrael Mispash. Because therefore, what did they do on Sukkot? They did both things together. They did Nisach HaMayim and Nisach HaYayin, which is combining both things together.
It skips 2 lines on the
What?
There's 2 lines on the last.
Oh, yeah, good eye. Therefore, he says, no, it's one line. Therefore, they dance at Nisach HaMayim. Now, L'cheira, Mayim is the Chochmah doesn't cause dancing. Mayim is Kabbalah soil, acceptance of the yoke. There's no understanding. Why would you dance to something you don't understand? Because by dancing at Nisach HaMayim, you're combining Chochmah and Bina together. Simcha is Bina. Remember the Rabbi said that before. Simcha is open. Ema banim smecha. Bina is the level of Simcha. Mayim l'chayr is the opposite of Simcha. Mayim is no taste, no smell, no nothing. Huh? Bittul. Kabbalah soil. So l'chayr, how can you dance by Nisach HaMayim? It's a different Aveda, the opposite Aveda. He said because the Aveda of Nisach HaMayim is connected to Simcha. To make Simcha, ein mikol mishorel Simcha's beis hasheva, the Simcha of Mayim have to stick Simcha Bina together with Chachma. And that was the uniqueness of Simcha's beis hasheva. Now, obviously, if Mayim and Yayin are opposites, right, and Chachma and Bina are opposites, in order to combine them, you need a koyach higher. That's what the Rebbe Rashab writes in Samach to Samach, the whole Hemshech Maamar. He said by the Frierdiker Rebbe's wedding, he speaks over there about when a Chos and a Kala gets married, and they stand under the chuppah, because Chos and a Kala is male and female, Ava Ein, it's Chachma and Bina. So they Kerach Ein Sof. They get the infinite power to be able to create children, because in order to combine male and female, Mars and Venus, or whatever way opposites you want to make them, you have to be tap into a level higher than both. And that's the Koyach at the Chuppah. When the Chasana, he said, you go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim or the Chuppah, at that time of Chuppah, you mamshech into the Chos and the Kala, the level of infinite Kedusha, that can combine two together to give birth. Okay, let's see Gimel. In order to understand what it says in the pasuk from the wells of salvation, we need to understand what does it mean when it says, "Case Yeshua says, I will elevate the cup of salvation." Right? We say this in Havdalah, which is the level of Malchus Batzilis, which is Case Yeshua's. Chassidus explains a cup is Malchus. Why is Kos Malchus? Because Malchus has nothing of its own. It only gets what less than Megamei Klum. It has nothing of its own. Therefore, David HaMelech, who personifies Malchus of Atzilus, was supposed to be born a stillborn. Supposed to be a Nephil. And he had to get life donated either from Adam Rishon, or another opinion in Kabbalah is from the Medrash, from the Av Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov donated life to him. Because Malchus has nothing of its own. How does Malchus exist? So it says, for Malchus of Chochmah becomes Chochmah of Malchus. For Malchus of Bina becomes Bina of Malchus. Malchus has nothing of its own. What's a cup? An empty cup has nothing of its own. You have to fill it. So Kais, Bechlal, is the level of Malchus. Therefore it says, we learned that in the other Maamar, when Mashiach comes, and it's going to be the free choice meat and fish course. Lev Yosef the Shor Bar, he's going to whack him, he's going to shecht him, So it says that all the Shivareim are going to be there, and they're going to say, Mi Mavarech. You're going to have Moshe and Aaron, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, all those spizens that we don't say physically, but we have them. So who's going to bench? So they're going to decide David HaMelech should bench, because this case Yeshua says a case of bracha is Malchus, is David HaMelech. So David HaMelech is going to lead the benching, not Aaron HaKoyen, not Moshe Rabbeinu, not just him. So David HaMelech says on his midah, case Yeshua Sasa. He says, that from this cup of Malchus comes the brachas of Yeshua's, the ale of the salvation from above, will not alone. He takes them, David HaMelech accepts them, and he gathers them into himself, and then he reveals it to the others. Like Malchus, what does Malchus do? Malchus in each world goes into the next world, right? Malchus of Atzilus, because it's a chain. So Malchus of Atzilus goes into Bria. Malchus of Bria goes into Yitzir, and so on. So Malchus gets all the keiches from higher, all the powers from higher, and then it gives it over, transmits it to the next lower level. So that's what the Zohar says. David HaMelech gathers everything, all the levels. Chachma Bin and Das, all of it comes into Malchus, and then from Malchus it goes into the next world. Water is too high to have a bracha of bringing it down. Huh? You don't make a bracha on water unless if you're thirsty, then you stop because of the water, it's because of the thirst that you quench. Halachically, if you're not thirsty, halachically, but halachically, if you have to take a medicine and you need water, and you wouldn't drink water otherwise, you don't make a bracha on it. If somebody drinks water, not because it says it's just water, so then you don't make a bracha on it.
Isn't the seed a malchut?
The seed?
Seed of a plant.
Yeah.
It has everything.
Yeah.
So,
And then it...
So how come malchut has nothing of its own? You're saying malchut doesn't have...
No, it only is given what it has from before. It only has what it has from the